The land down under has never been easier to reach. United Airlines has more flights between the US and Australia than any other US airline, so you can fly nonstop to destinations like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Explore dazzling cities, savor the very best of Aussie cuisine, and get up close and personal with the wildlife. Who doesn't want to hold a koala? Go to united.com/Australia to book your adventure.
Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. I'm Jamel Zainasheff.
I'm Travis Gumbel.
And I'm Mike Persine, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
All right. Man, it's been a while. Things been going on.
Right.
You been somewhere fun, Jamil?
I have. Went with the wife to Tahiti for her birthday. Tahiti.
Yes,
Which seems really far and exotic, but it's really not that far. It's same time zone as Hawaii, and I'm sure there are people who think of Hawaii as far and exotic, but living in California, not that far and exotic. And then Tahiti's like extra couple hours by plane, still a nonstop. You know, it was cool. Went to some islands. Swam with some humpback whales. That was really cool.
That sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah. There's a pretty big oceanic white-tipped shark checking us out. It's like, whoa.
That would be scary.
Manta rays, stingrays, black-tipped sharks. Yeah. It was a blast. Absolute blast. Went to a little distillery out there on one of the islands. Island like 6,000 people. Had a distillery. They mainly distill stuff and put fruit in, like, sugars and fruits and stuff. It's pretty good. Pretty good.
They making more rums or anything, or is it a certain type?
The rums, but mainly, kind of like brandies, fruit brandies and stuff.
Very
really cool. Yeah, I had a good time. It was a blast. And there was there's some craft breweries out there, Tahiti.
No way.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It's kind of cool. The whole craft beer thing and craft spirits is really gone worldwide. There's nary a place you can go where you don't see something like that. So
awesome.
It's kind of fun. What else is kind of fun?
John
Blickman Engineering?
Blickman Engineering.
Magic carpet.
Magic carpet. John Blickman's magic carpet. Yes, that is exactly. And actually, it's Drew Barnes's magic carpet now, Blickman Engineering, and he is doing a wonderful job with it, creating all sorts of new and fantastic equipment for both your homebrew needs and your pro needs. If you're looking at going pro, if you're looking at being a craft brew professional, you can check the stuff out there. A lot of folks want to start on. I started 37 barrels, which is probably not the best move, but you can start 10 barrels and below. Blickman Engineering's got a lot of things you should look at. Check them out. Our excellent sponsor. They've been taking care of us for 16 plus years. So you get the show for free. And yeah, I think it's nice if you can just say, hey, howdy, hey to Blickman Engineering. You can send Drew an email at feedback@blickmanengineering.com and say, hi, thanks for all the cool gear. Thanks for sponsoring Brew Strong. They pay for it so you don't have to. So there you go.
So is Drew actually sending checks, or is it on auto draft and he hasn't caught it yet?
Hey, let's not give out the Brewing Network secrets here. I'm not sure how Justin gets it. He may be getting it in some sort of weird, funky trade value or something. He may, go for, some Iowa corn or something, an RV full of corn. I don't know. Hard to say exactly how things work. All I know is I don't see any checks. But hey, that doesn't mean that we still don't enjoy doing the Brew Strong. So today is I also want to mention the book, the Modern Homebrewer book that I just did with Andy Parker of Elusive Brewing in England. The book has gone to press, and copies should be delivering September 2nd, as early as September 2nd. They said they'd have some copies. So if you've ordered your book, they were taking pre-orders, those things will start showing up, and hopefully you enjoy it.
I saw that release mentioned on a British website. Is there a US website to go to, or do we go to the British website to buy the book?
I don't know. I think you go to the Camera website. I did ask. They say they're working out the US publisher, and hopefully we'll have a US publisher here. You can order them, and then they'll have them on Amazon and all that regular stuff. So it might take a little bit if you are in the USA, in the USA.
So we might not get ours in September necessarily, but we might. You
might.
Somebody
might mail you one.
Do they have to do all the work to convert from metric to wonky?
Well, we'll see. I actually learned to write in British English spelling, and that was Google has a great feature, Google Docs, where you can tell it what language you're working in, and then it corrects the spelling, whatever way. So after doing that for 6-8 months, I in emails I was writing, I'd be like, British English.
Are you savoring the flavor?
Yes,
with your color,
and then and I'm like, well, that's not misspelled. I'm like, oh yeah, American English. So that was kind of cool. I really enjoyed it. It was a different experience.
Very cool.
Yeah, hopefully the book is well received. Let's see here. Today, as I was going to say, our show is all about what? CoolPooling.
Whirlpools.
Cool whirlpools. Yeah.
Very cool whirlpools.
Whirlpooling and how you go cool. So without further ado, Travis, why don't you start off?
Sure. Yeah. So let's start off with the definition of whirlpool/CoolPool. What do you have for us, Mike?
Well, so the whirlpool, pretty much as defined as the period after the boil where the wort is spun, and this spinning action animates the trub, and then as the spinning action slows down, that's when the clarification and collection of the trub into a cone occurs at the bottom. That was more used as a step to try to pull the solids to the middle and allow for the wort to be knocked out or sent to the fermenters or through a heat exchanger after boiling, and keep that solid matter in the kettle. So it's a technique used to try to keep the solids in the kettle.
Like most things in commercial brewing, trying to, make more money, cost less.
Yep.
So you can collect more wort. They would shoot the wort in at a tangential angle. Actually, I was at a brewery, Bateman's, which is a fantastic brewery, 150 years old, in England. And they have, they had the kettle above the whirlpool, and it was gravity fed into the whirlpool. There's no pumps. They just
Nice.
open a
Wow.
big old pipe, and it drains that thing in like, under a couple minutes, and starts this huge whirlpool going. So,
Nice.
they were doing whirlpools, a long time ago. And what happens is when you spin something like that, the outer liquid is going faster than the liquid in the middle. And so the particles stay in suspension on the outside. But if they're in the middle, they drop to the bottom because it's not moving very fast. And so they drop straight to the bottom. And that's how it makes that little trube cone in the bottom. It keeps the sides clear. And then you draw off your liquid through the heat exchanger, like Mike was saying. And you get, you don't clog up your heat exchanger, all that stuff. So they figured that out a long time ago. So very cool.
Yeah, it's when I was taking the courses at Davis, Charlie Bamforth described the whirlpool much like a teacup, and as you stir your teacup and you let it settle, the little tea flakes will coalesce in the middle. So that's what he would have likened it to, was when you spin any kind of liquid with any kind of solid in it.
Yes.
He also referred to it's actually an exercise in the conservation of momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So as they fall in the middle during the spinning, but then as the deceleration of that spin, the solid particles do coalesce towards the center to conserve their momentum. So it's pretty neat.
Every morning I actually whirlpool my tea in my giant Bubba cup to get the honey off the bottom by whirlpooling it. The center liquid goes down, the side liquid comes up.
Yep.
And mixes that way. So there you go. That's why whirlpooling, troop. All right. And so continue. We kind of digressed there, but I thought it was interesting.
So
digression.
We could get started here. I mean, we went through kind of a little bit of the historical, where it comes from and how they were doing it a long time ago. But kind of up until recently, the whirlpool has been essentially a separation stage to try to maximize, beer volume extracted out of the kettle. And so historically, these weren't very long events. Usually you'd spin it up for 5 to 10 minutes and then allow it to stop spinning, and then you'd transfer it or send it to a chiller. Usually that was, they didn't really let it cool or intentionally cool it at all to try to do that. They just would turn the flames off or turn the steam or however they were heating this thing and spin it. So that was more of the historical kind of use of it. But now, in the new age of flavor, the whirlpool is actually an extremely important, place where we can extract more flavor from hops or other ingredients. So we can get into more of the typical lengths and things like that. So, kind of depends on what you're using for equipment, but usually, like I can speak to my setup, and I have just a regular kettle. I don't have a separate whirlpool, but I'll spin the liquid to try to get it cooling down, and then if I'm adding hops or adding other ingredients, I usually have a specified temperature, and kind of that can affect the length of this whirlpool. But usually I'm no more than 20 minutes of hop steeping, and then, like I said, I do a spin and then let it stop. So start to finish, I might be more 30 to 45 minutes. But if you're not
Mike,
adding anything,
I think we're kind of getting deep into it. Maybe in a little bit of a rush here. Let's back it up. So you said you're whirlpooling, just traditionally we were using it just to clarify the wort a little bit, to get a better extract for fermenting, all the stuff the breweries wanted to do so they could make a little more money off their beer, make more beer. So But what are homebrewers doing? You hinted on a little bit more for flavor. I mean, what's the main thing homebrewers now are doing, and even pros are doing with the whirlpooling?
So yeah, I mean, we can get into that. Right now, whirlpooling is very considered a hop uh, addition time, because the lower temperatures allow you to add flavor without adding bitterness. So the homebrewers are using it as a way to increase that hop flavor and aroma without increasing bitterness, and really taking advantage of those slightly lower temperatures or even significantly lower temperatures in some circumstances. But that would be the most one. I mean, some people add fruit, some people add other ingredients like vanilla or anything
Some late
in
flavor
the
additions as
whirlpool.
well.
Yeah,
It's good stuff.
so
Well,
there's a lot of cool things.
let's talk about how we're using these hops in whirlpool and so forth after this break. So we'll be right back.
Right after this.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on two gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at blickmanengineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking whirlpool, CoolPool, whatever you want to call it. All the hip young kids these days, they're talking about the CoolPool. I'm old.
Yeah, I look at lineups of homebrewers and I don't see young and hip. Sorry. I'd like to see more young and hip. I would. So Mike, you were saying hops. I think that's the biggest thing. But also considering late flavor additions, tell us about how we might, when we might. I mean, do we care if the hops get caught up in the trub? Are we waiting on anything? Are we doing it immediately at flame out? Tell us about whirlpooling with the hops.
Yeah, so it almost depends on what you're going for. I mean, what kind of flavors, and then I would actually say there's even disputes about what flavors are contained where, and there's a lot of science going on and research trying to determine where are these flavors maximized at what temperatures and for how long. But so after the boil, I mean, if you're at sea level, you're at 212, and you would isomerize just like you would in any boil hop addition. But for most brewers, they're going to go down to 190, 180, 170, even as low as 160 degrees Fahrenheit to achieve the certain flavors they're trying to go for. In Scott Janish's book, he talks about whirlpool temperatures, and he actually speaks about more of the terpene alcohols and the other oxidize or alcohol terpenes and stuff like that can remain in the liquid that have more fruit character and more citrus and tropical and these other flavors that you might want. And then at that higher temperature, the other ones like your hydrocarbons and your other non-alcohol terpenes are driven off by that hotter temperature. So those hydrocarbons are going to be more of your your grassy, your pine, your kind of woody aromatics flavors that you might not want in your beer. And so in the new IPA by Scott Janish, he actually if you're looking for fruit flavor, his meta-analysis of the science at the time, which was 2019, was to go a little warmer and do more around 180, 190 to target fruit and drive off pine, wood, grass. So that's one point of view. And then a lot of the actual more conventional wisdom is to go cold. Colder you go, the more it's like a dry hop, the more hop aroma you're going to keep in the beer, the less you're going to volatilize and drive off and turn, out the top of the kettle or your whirlpool if you have a separate whirlpool vessel. But so, more of that 175, 170, and then, you get to that new hip term, CoolPooling, where if you're down around 160, you're kind of getting close to where you're leaving that pasteurization zone. You're getting close to where you're getting to where you're too cold and you could risk infection if you leave the top off. And so they're right there at the bottom, trying to get it maximize the hop compound transfer to the beer without having it be sent out the top because of heat. So that's kind of the rundown on temperature of Whirlpool for hop addition. So I hope that was a good answer.
That was excellent. Thank you, Mike. Now, are you going to do this process at a different length of time depending on the temperature? Is that going to make a difference on your final product? Or are you going to try to fix your window and determine your temperature? Or even
Absolutely.
would you consider sweeping temperature, anything like that? Is anything typically done like that you've heard of?
Yeah. So, I mean, the typical wisdom are, kind of the guideline, I guess, that a lot of brewers use is the higher the temperature, the shorter the period of the Whirlpool steep, the hop steep, if you will, needs to be. And then if you go lower temperatures, you can extend that out. So I have kind of I've seen where, the real hotter ones like 190, 180, you can do 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then I've heard of, the CoolPooling where you're letting these hops steep for upwards of an hour, 45 minutes to try to really extract that flavor without transferring too much bitterness or astringency, because you do get some IBU isomerization, some bitterness, some alpha acid isomerization, I should say. So you really want to be cognizant of that and just, try stuff out. Yeah, there's all kinds of different times and temperatures, and you kind of got to experiment. So.
Good stuff. I like that. Now, I do have one personal note on the temperature. I've been through this process of wasn't hip or cool, so I didn't call it CoolPooling until recently. And I started off maybe 180 and batch after batch, I'd slowly bring it down. And I guess I got down to where when I hit 158, I'd stop chilling and kind of let it settle, and it'd go between 158 and 162 because I have an electric kettle and I can dial it in. And lately, the last couple of years, I've been playing with some of these hop products. And
Neat.
the newer, the fancier ones, they're all flowable at room temp, but I don't spend that kind of money. I buy the older technology, whatever I can afford kind of thing. And Salvo specifically, you need it to be about 165 to be good and flowable. And I've taken that and I look at my hops saying, well, if that's hop stuff, how different can my hops be? So that's my target temperature these days, 165. And it's because of what I've seen, how the Salvo acts, just waxes and stuff up in there.
And you're saying if you're colder than that, the product stays more of like a waxy, viscous
parts of it. Yeah, it's not homogeneous at all.
That's really the new technology, honestly, in brewing is the term hop flowables, where these products don't contain any solid material, and so the beer yield out of your kettle is not affected by hop additions or, so we've gone from dried whole cone hops that absorb tons of your beer to hop flowables that consume none of your beer. So
yeah, technically it adds volume, but you're not going to add much of it.
It actually adds, yeah. So there you go.
What would be if somebody's just starting out homebrewing and they want to start or been in homebrewing, but they want to start trying CoolPooling or whirlpooling at a cooler temperature? What's the advice? What would be a good temperature for them to start with? Let's say they're making a New England style IPA.
I mean, if they really want to try CoolPooling and get into that, I'd say just what Travis was saying, 165. And I use a big brew in a bag for the Whirlpool hops in my kettle, so I don't make more. I could pull them right out. There's no material that needs to be filtered or somehow kept from getting into the fermenter. And then I would say, you know, dose rates for New England IPAs, I'm typically around, you know, a half an ounce per gallon, maybe up to an ounce per gallon if you're feeling real frisky. But I'd say somewhere in there, just kind of start out. I also recommend using the varietals that center around hop aroma and you know, fruit and tropical citrus aromas that are very pleasant, and those flavors usually do survive to the finished beer versus some of your more volatile flavors that do not.
So,
Yeah, so
like what hops?
Well, I honestly, I always go with, you know, your big hitters: Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe, El
it's the
Dorado,
Holy Trinity.
the Holy
Mhm.
Trinity now.
Right.
Yeah, no more 3Cs, but I could even say I've done Lotus a lot. I love that orange creamsicle flavor of Lotus, and then Brew One is a new one that does a lot of pineapple and tropical flavor. People really like Talus or Sabro if you're looking for a coconut. You know, the world is your oyster, and any flavor you want. I feel Citra is more of a general, you know, citrus fruit flavor, and then you've got your Mosaic, which can be a blueberry kind of danky, but still, you know, really delicious. I always consider Simcoe one of my favorites because it's such a complex flavor profile where it's got some fruit, it's got some you know, kind of dank flavors, some even, you know, floral things going on. It has just this really beautiful. I actually add it as, like, you know, almost to all my beers just because I think it adds so much synergy with so many different varietals. So, little rundown, I guess, but
HBC 586.
Yeah, it's another
yeah,
good hop. Yeah.
the experimentals. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope
Tom.
that wasn't a flash in the pan, and they can the breeding can be, you know,
Tom
isolated,
mentions
so
it.
that can become a full on breed, but a varietal.
Yeah,
So
I've been buying 586 for a few years now. I think
okay,
it's going to
cool.
stick around. I haven't bought a lot of hops lately because I have so much stock. You know, Yakima Valley hops probably, you know, they have it there. If you see the 2024 crop pop up in a couple of months, that's a really good sign. You know, October, I think,
Yeah.
is when they drop the new hops. But Jamil, your question on new brewers, it's interesting because new brewers have one advantage on this kind of cool pooling, and that, you know, I know when I started, despite the fact I was making crappy beer, I was boiling in the, you know, small kettle and adding water, and, you know, so that water was pre-sanitized. I'd boil it and let it cool, so you can instantly cool your wort with some of that extra water you have there. Bring it down to your cool pool temperature. And
That's
as Mike said, use a
yeah.
muslin sock or something to keep that material from just totally making your day miserable.
That's a
So
great suggestion for brewers that are brewing a stronger wort and watering it down. Yeah, Tom also mentions that HPC 586 is called Crush now with a K.
There
I
you
would have
go.
missed it. Thank you, Tom.
They've christened it with a name, so there you go.
Yes.
I'd be also curious year over year how much flavor, if it's pretty consistent. I know it's just very new and it's super popular, so I actually haven't used it myself. I've been a little more.
Tom also asked, you know, if you could discuss using a float tank versus a whirlpool. Have you guys ever done a float tank?
I have
not.
Yeah, float tank for me was always once you're cooled down to fermentation temperature, you bubble air through the wort, and that lifts the trube, and then you can get the trube, dump the trube or the break material. It's a way of getting rid of the break material, clarifying wort. And then you put it in a tank, and I don't know if there's really a very specific shape of a float tank, but they may, I don't know, they could be horizontal, vertical, whatever. But, you know, they'd have like a sintered stone, and it would, the fine bubbles would lift all the material up. And then you could drain off the your wort and
Underneath.
yeah, I think they may even do it in after you've pitched, before you pitch. I'm not really sure. It's not something that I ever did, although I've read about it in the past. I don't know it. I don't know how common it is. I don't
It's like
think.
pro level or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'd be easy enough to implement on a homebrew scale. But I wonder, if you could do that. That might be a way of, if you're going to add your hops, pre-fermentation, instead of, it's one of the things I always said is fermenting with your hops in the wort, hopping dry hopping at the beginning of fermentation, I think is a bad idea. But if you did something like this, you could, agitate it and maybe, get the hops mixed in real well, let them settle, and then draw your wort off and ferment after that. And I think you might get a better result. You leave all that leaf material in there, and I think that's not a good thing. So maybe that's something somebody should try. I think Tom should do it. Tom, you're up.
Well, Tom said me neither. So he just had the question. He just threw the hand grenade in our direction.
Right.
Let us worry about it. Thank you, Tom.
Back. I can speak to from my profession in water treatment, we do a lot of air flotation like that for clarification. So we actually do it at the facility I work at. So
make the poopy bits float to the top.
Yeah, the activated sludge, if you will. But usually we have to use like flocculants and stuff to get it to agglomerate so that it can be lifted. And so I don't know how effective it would be in this tank if the little proteins just blast apart. So you got to have a real gentle, like a fine bubble. So yeah, I don't know.
What flocculation aids do you use to coagulate the poopy bits?
Activated sludge.
The activated sludge.
So we use a polymer, a cationic polymer that has a positive charge that actually works really well.
Poopy bits are negatively charged?
Poopy bits are negative, yeah.
Oh.
And it's actually not poopy bits. This is a biomass that has eaten the poopy bits and grown and propagated out. So then we take that biomass and we have to waste it. So then we use a thickener, which is a air flotation tank. So yay.
Thicken up the poopy bits.
Yep.
We're all going to be chemies by the time we're done with this. Thank you, Mike. You're outstanding, man.
Not to get too heady, yeah, but that's my. So
there you go. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take one more short break, and we'll be back right after this.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. So we're talking whirlpooling, cool whirlpooling. Travis?
Sure, we talked a lot about temperature, and Jamil, you had a very good question for a new brewer, especially looking at a NEPA. And Mike, you glanced on it. I don't know how much detail we need to go on it, but despite the flavors you want, and it's definitely going to come back to timing and temperature on something like a NEPA because you don't want a lot of IBUs, right?
Right. That was the one of the things I wanted to get to was isomerization of alpha acids, and there is a common misconception that just because you're not boiling, there's zero, and I mean that is not correct. The reaction slows, and it has kind of it follows any chemical reaction kinetic equation where temperature is related to that. And what I do is I actually was reading a Emerging Magazine article, and they had a really good reference in there that isomerization halves, like the speed of it halves every 10 degrees Celsius. And so you can try to, use the rule of thumb that, if I'm at, 175, which is like 80 centigrade, and let's say you boil at 100, you're going to get, 25% of the total isomerization you would get at boil. And there's even now, I think they build it into Beersmith and all these other technologies, if I'm not mistaken. I don't personally use them, but they can calculate that. And really it comes into play with these any IPAs, hazy IPA, the beers where these whirlpool charges are significant, and they can contribute. I actually in this hazy IPA I just made, I had over 25 IBU calculated. Granted, I didn't do any chemistry or lab testing that was contributed directly from the whirlpool. So it's not zero, and it is definitely needs to be accounted for. Otherwise, you'll be unhappy with your bitterness.
Well, and you'll get bitterness even from just straight dry hopping.
Right.
The whole concept of IBUs anymore, I think, is close to meaningless in a lot of these modern heavily hopped beers, because we don't add hops to the boil anymore.
Yeah.
Add them at a cool whirlpool. But even if you just dry hop something, you can get pretty healthy bitterness to it. So
yeah, I would definitely say too that's also varietal dependent because of these non-alpha acid or even beta acid. There's all these cohumulones and other chemical or compounds that contribute to bitterness and or at least like these that wouldn't be picked up in the IBU test per se, but they still do have a sensory of bitter. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're not doing that. And something that I've noticed a lot in some of my IPAs, when they come out of the fermenter, they're pretty raw and they almost have a bitter astringency to them, but because they've been dry hopped so heavily. And my always key is wait a week, wait 2 weeks, and keep checking it. And usually they kind of blossom. They kind of mature into great beers. So be patient on that.
So IBUs in general, sure, at higher temperatures, but bitterness overall, you're going to pick some up because, I was saying, if you think hops need to be isomerized to be bitter, just go chew a hop pellet and you'll find out they don't need to be isomerized to be bitter. There's a lot of bitterness in there. Yeah, it's outstanding.
Yeah, and then if I could, I'd like to get into maybe a little bit of the advantages and disadvantages of whirlpooling, I guess, for hop additions. And really the big advantage too is on top of that lower bitterness is you have that, like as Jamil was mentioning, less hop matter in the fermenter, and these things are. I actually use the whirlpool more like a dry hop or like a first wort, or like what do they call it, hop dipping, when you would add hops to the fermenter as you're transferring. Because like Jamil said, I do not want that hop material in there for 14 days, transferring all of those grassy vegetal notes. I think that the big advantage of a whirlpool is you're selecting for hop flavor and leaving what the grassy astringent kind of leafy material that would be fermented in the kettle. So, and then some of the disadvantages, as we talked about, added bitterness, but then you are going to lose some flavor compared to a dry hop. I mean, that this is a hotter temperature, and you will be driving off some of those very delicate flavors that can't. They have a very low boil point, and they have a high, vapor fraction, so they will be driven off pretty quick. The other big one that I wanted to touch on for disadvantages was the ability to control the temperature. So, depending on your setup, it could be rather difficult to maintain your specified temperature, because if you're using a burner, or if you're you got electric setup, or any kind of thing, it could be like you're having to sit there and baby it to make sure it stays at that certain temperature, because it's not like a boil where it hits 204 and it just, you're either and then it has to do with the heat load and how much boil vigor you get, but it never raises temperature, right? So you can kind of just keep it on. But if you're at 180 and you leave your burner on too long, you're going to get back to boil.
Right. At 204, Mike, what's your altitude there?
That's my boil point at 4,400 feet. So
nice.
212 is the other one.
The few times I've done it in an almost unregulated manner, from memory, I guess. I mean, I don't know how I used to get away with it for so long on gas. but you can insulate your kettle. You probably don't want to do it while the flame's on, or insulate it safely. Try to maintain that temperature, and stop a little warm. Let it cool off a little bit during your process. You can dial it in. You get used to how much temperature you're losing through a 30-minute or so whirlpool, and just plan for it. One of the most interesting things about hops is just how different the exact same pellet can be depending on when you put it in your wort or beer. It's amazing. From starting 90-minute boil to after fermentation, what you get out of it, it just varies so much. So definitely experiment on that. See what you like for what you're getting from your hops.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jamil.
What I get from all that is, you're telling me if I go up to the top of like Mount Everest, I could probably boil and CoolPool my hops at the same time.
Definitely.
There you go.
I actually think
that's what I'm starting to think about.
I kind of joke around the high altitude because, if you're up in Lake Tahoe or name your high altitude, it's you're basically whirlpooling for however long you're boiling. So it's just, you can add so many more hops with so much less isomerization. Not to say that you're not going to get those other bitterness flavors, but it's kind of fun over here. I actually add a little more hops than most people, that boil at sea level. So I usually have to step up.
All right. So in your especially when the one you just knocked out, what is your typical rate that you would use for your NEPAs as a whirlpool? Easiest if you give it in a 5-gallon batch, or give it per liter per whatever.
So
what size batch are you running, Mike?
Yeah, for a 5-gallon batch, I mean, one of my really good recipes for my any IPA, I'm more of I based my whole thing off of the new IPA, so I'm more at 180 degrees Fahrenheit to kind of select for those fruit characters and drive off the grassy green. I'll spin the wort to try to help it cool off, leave the lid off after boil. Then, like I said, I'm using a brew in the bag size bag, like one of the big ones. I found the muslin bags leave some dry. The hops in the center aren't even barely wet. They kind of hold it too close together. Then when I add those, I start the clock. I actually split the whirlpool charge in two. So I'll do a first one, and then I'll wait 10 minutes and do a second one. And then usually by that time, the wort's cooled to more like 170. And then at the end of that total length of 20 minutes, I'll pull the hops, spin it one more time, allow it to stop, and then transfer. And that's my my super top secret, gold medal IPA whirlpool for what it's worth.
And how many ounces per edition are you doing?
Yeah, so let's do a 5-gallon batch. I'm probably going to be around 3 to 4 ounces total, I believe, and
it's like a charge of 2 and a charge of 2.
Yeah, let me actually, if you give me 1 sec, you guys can talk about maybe your experiences while I pull it up. I don't want to lead people astray.
How about you, Travis?
So I use let's see, usually I'm lost on mine now. I think I do 8 ounces on a heavy one on my 5-gallon batches. I know I'll do no, it's 4. Sorry, I'm trying to do the math. I'd use a pound on a smash, typically trying to get the flavor of a new hop, and I'll usually do around 4 in the bittering. This is obviously not a NEPA. I'll adjust it if it's NEPA, and I'll do 4 in a whirlpool and then 4 on 2 separate dry hops. So NEPA, I'll do up to maybe 2, depending on how much bitterness I want in it, which is, some people say no bittering hops for NEPAs, but I do here and there. And then I'll do like 6 ounces, and I knock out 5.8 gallons with the 6 ounces of hops into my fermenter. So about 6 ounces on mine.
All right. The boiling temperature on Mount Everest, 154 Fahrenheit, 68.
What?
Wow. There you go. You can
does that even drive off the SMM or precursor for DMS or
I don't know.
There you go. I would imagine it's all about the boil, hitting the bubbling.
Yeah.
So you're still creating the precursor at that temperature, I'm pretty sure.
You need to volatilize it. And hopefully it's splashing out with the boil that you're getting.
Yeah.
So 154.
I wouldn't even have to make it all the way to the top of Everest. I could
there you go.
stop somewhere on the side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to kind of bring it full circle, because I pulled up my recipe to make sure. I for a 5-gallon batch, let's say I have 7 gallons in the kettle, I'm using around 4 ounces of hops in my whirlpool total. So that'd be 2 and 2.
2 and 2.
And like I said, I'm kind of more of a half ounce per gallon, or somewhere in between a half and 1 ounce per gallon for a whirlpool, only because I'm trying to be cognizant of how much actual bitterness this is going to contribute. I mean, that's kind of my limiting factor. So, and then I'm with Travis. I believe beer should have hops added to the boil. It adds more character, it adds more complexity, it just brings more hop layering to the beer. I think any beer should have even a tiny little...
You old guys, you're stuck in your ways.
Hey, I think, and this was actually, I think I've told this story on this podcast, but it was an accident. He screwed up and added some at the wrong time, and he felt like it made the beer way better. So I've kind of subscribed to that. I believe that. Like I used to do beers with no boil hops, and I just felt like they were a little kind of, if you're going just for straight juice and you don't want it to taste like beer, you just want it to taste like juice, that's your guy. But I kind of like, it should still have a little homage to, hey, I'm still a beer. But that's just me.
Well,
I'm all about mistakes that make my beer better. I try to make them often.
Yeah,
that's the hope.
Yeah, pretty much all your beers have mistakes, right? Yeah.
Certainly.
Yes.
All right, Jamil, is it time for our third break?
We could go ahead and take the third break now. It's a little early, but that's all right. That's all right. Let's take our third break, and we'll be back right after this. Okay, we're back. We're talking whirlpool hopping. We're talking CoolPooling. We're talking hopping rates in the whirlpool.
Oil temperature on Mount Everest.
Oil temperature on Mount Everest. 154 Fahrenheit, 68 C. Thank you very much.
There you go.
68 C. That's a yeah.
I think yeah.
I have an idea. I have something I'd like to mention.
More You're going to Mount Everest?
Yeah, that too. No. I was going to get back to the whirlpool conversation, but if you guys want to keep going.
Okay.
All right. So
on topic. Why would you do that?
I think speaking more to what Travis was mentioning about advantages for the home brewer, and I've actually heard you talk about this on the show, Jamil, like the difference between hop additions in a kettle or a whirlpool at the homebrew scale versus the pro scale. It's like on the pro scale, as soon as you throw those hops in, they're in there until until the beer's gone. And with us, we can use bags, and we can do, other, hop spiders and things like that, where we can precisely control the contact time of our hops, and it's not dependent on draining and
you can pro level. It just depends how big your system is. So, there was something that we wanted to teabag in the whirlpool or whatever. And so we got, giant, mesh bags that were like, trash can liners. And then we had like 20 of them with a little bit in each one. And then we'd put them in, and, they'd swell up, and then trying to get them back out the door and all that. And it,
weight
get
and
really
size,
heavy.
getting it out. Yeah.
And
crane.
But I have seen some commercial things where they had like an overhead, hoist, and they would, hook a bag up to it, and it's a giant bag, and then the top of the kettle's open, and they would hoist it out. But yeah, it's
I guess also
it's not practical most of the time.
Yeah,
Huggy used to brew one of the breweries he worked at, roasted jalapenos in their jalapeno beer, and they would use those in bags. They wouldn't just leave it in the wort, which was probably a good thing. So they would not large enough to need a hoist, but they would dip it and pull it back out. But Typical
They
practicality,
teabag it.
Mike. Yeah, it's just not teabag. Correct. They teabag it. They
Well,
should have named the beer teabagging. I swear somebody should do it.
yeah. No, and I guess to be more specific, I mean it's all the hops, right? It's any hop you put in that kettle on the homebrew scale can be easily removed with a very small bag or hop spider versus building giant apparatchiks and mouse traps with pulleys to pull out these giant. I'm just saying, and I've heard you speak to this where when you're trying to scale a recipe up, you have to account for the fact that, if you have a hop spider and you remove your bittering hops at flame out, you have to count now that those hops are going to stay in that beer a lot longer than they would have, and things like that, and
Yeah.
and then
Especially when you're trying to recreate commercial beer. A lot of times people
Yeah.
have trouble with, clone recipes because what a lot of the clone recipes don't include is the amount of time it takes the commercial brewer to knock out, and also the amount of time it takes them to, do any transfers that they're doing. And so, they go from the kettle to the whirlpool. That's 20 minutes, 40 minutes. They let it sit in the whirlpool for another, hour or so when they're knocking out into the fermenter. And so you have to account for that because all the hot matter that's in there, or whatever, whatever spices, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's a good
I
point, Mike.
I did a pro-am with Huggy at a different brewer of his, and doing, targeting a cool pool, chilling. It was at least a half hour sitting there rotating that work to get it down to about the 160, 170 to throw the hops in. I was like, man, it's not like freezing cold, but it was not. It's just things take longer on when you have that much more volume and that much larger scale. And as you said, that's going to affect the flavor of the beer because those boil hops, they're in there that whole time.
Right.
The whirlpool hops aren't in there yet, but those boil hops still are, along with everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had one other one that I was thinking homebrew versus pro is the big one is mixing. So, we think of professionals where they have big pumps and they're piping it into research, as a jet to spin it. On our scale, I mean, even here, I have the equipment to do it, but I don't. I usually just use a spoon and I'm just spinning it with the good old brewing spoon and or your mat, any kind of paddle or whatever to spin that around. That seems to me to be an advantage for home brewers to not have to have. You don't have to buy pumps and big hoses and all the associated equipment to be able to do this. You just need a spoon. So there's
I
no
like
reason
big
not to do
hoses.
it. I got hose.
Now, I am a fan of the Whirlpool chiller, as made famous by Mr. Malty here.
Right.
I do enjoy that accessory. And whatever kit I recreate, I'll get something that I can redo that on because it is a nice advantage. But you're right, it doesn't take that. It's just I like it.
Yeah. When I have I counterflow heat exchange, so I don't have any chilling going on in the kettle other than I spin it with the lid off to try to get down to whirlpool hop steeping
The
temp.
cool pool
To
temps,
cool pool, yeah, I'm
as
cool.
kids
I gotta,
say.
yeah. Is that like where you have to, I don't know, you got to get some like headband or something to be cool, wear some
No,
sunglasses.
don't be a fool, pool. Come on.
Don't be a fool.
So,
Well, that's
Mike,
where you. Go
any other
ahead.
tips you have for us? Anything else you want to reiterate, emphasize, let us understand the things we should be? So we talk about a lot of detail here, and we can focus on some, we can focus on all. It's infinite with brewing. Anything you want to take us home with?
Yeah, I mean, I always emphasize develop your recipe, try something, and then tweak it, try something different, and those temperatures and times are going to be the big flavor changers. Like you said, with the same exact hop pellet at a different time and a different temperature is going to deliver a different flavor. So, and then like I said, kind of if you have time to read the book, like the new IPA, I think you'll find there's some really interesting ways to try to push for more fruit character if that's what you're going for. But I mean, there's people who whirlpool with CTZ and Chinook to try to push more pine and citrus. I mean, not citrus. Kind of that woody aromatic flavors. So I mean, I would just emphasize that this is a really good place to get a lot of hop flavor without any leaf material in your fermenter. So that's what I got.
Jamil, final tips from you?
Well, and I went around, between 170 175 on the cool pool temperature, and one of the advantages I think to this is, yeah, you're not, especially if you want to do, fruits or spices that, might be, questionable as far as bacteria or wild yeast on them. You can use them at this temperature and you'll get less of a cooked character than boiling them. And, you still have enough heat to really, pasteurize that material. So you can get some good extraction. You're pasteurizing it. You don't have to worry about contamination, and you're not getting that cooked character. So it not only works for hops. I think CoolPooling could work for your other spice and fruit additions that you might add.
I like it.
How about you, Travis?
Well, I also like how you split the difference between Mike and I. I'm 165, he's 180. You come in right in the middle there. You say, "Hey, you're both wrong. You're supposed to be doing it at 175." This is what I'm telling you. No, I'm a big fan of it. I do think you get more expression at any of the temperatures versus just throwing it at flame out. And yeah, I go back 10 years ago when your great buddy Tasty was developing the heck out of IPA recipes, and he did some staged ones right at the end as he went into his whirlpool hopping and so forth. And that was, I guess, probably before we were really trying to control that cool pool temperature. But it was all about that, because you shut the flame off, it starts cooling, and you're getting the effect as it cools down. And Patrick in the chat pointed out, Doc always says change one thing at a time. And right as he's saying that, I'm thinking about what Mike's saying. I can do my exact same smash and do a different whirlpool temp. And that's something I haven't experimented with, and I should. Same batch of hops, or theoretically, as far as a homebrewer knows, same year in the bag. Do the exact same smash back to back or so with two different temperatures on that whirlpool, that cool pool, and see what the flavor differences are that I get. Because I think that'd be some outstanding results there.
Yeah. And just to speak on that, one last little thing, that with that beer that I do the 2 charges for Whirlpool, I'm anticipating a 10-degree Fahrenheit drop. So you're even getting that different flavor selection as the wort cools down to try to layer the flavors. That's how so the first one goes in at 180, the second one goes in at 170.
You're doing 2 layers on it.
You're getting layers, yeah, which is my goal always with IPA, is lots of complexity, lots of layering.
So what haven't we covered here? We've covered the temperature, covered durations. Obviously started off with the definition. We discussed what you might be getting out of it. We know that you're going to have a hard time doing it on the top of Mount Everest because your boil temperature is too low. And we stretch way back. We understand that Jamil had the best time of his life in Tahiti with his wife. That's outstanding. What's left? None of us do the float mechanism.
Mm-mm.
No, we don't do that. And Tom's going to do it for us. He's going to tell us what it's about.
There you go.
I like
All
it.
right. I think it's very interesting. Thank you, Mike, for coming up with all the information on whirlpooling. It's fascinating. I think we all learned quite a bit, and I think let's see, if you're listening live, stay tuned, because we have live Q&A coming up next. We'll have another show, and if you want to ask your questions, right there on Facebook in the little chat box, click on the video you see of us playing, and then you can enter something in the comments window, and we'll see that, and we'll kind of take your questions and questions that people have emailed in. Make sure to support our fine sponsor, Blickman Engineering, and all the other sponsors you might hear about during the breaks. But check them out, blickmanengineering.com. Ask for them in your local homebrew shop. Go in and say, hey, what Blickman Engineering gear do you have? If you don't buy some, it's kind of cool to check out some of these things. One of my favorites still to this day is the Blickman beer gun. I think it was such a clever way of accomplishing the same thing in a unique and actually very improved way over
Have you
a lot of
upgraded
the
to the
other
version
things.
2 on that, Jamil?
Huh?
Have you upgraded to the version 2 beer gun?
I don't have a beer gun.
Oh.
I'm
Sans beer gun.
I'm a pauper. All I fill is casks at this point.
Yeah, the
Take-
version 2
wow.
beer gun is even
Take them
nicer.
up for the pub. I can
Yeah,
imagine.
it's pretty cool.
And all their gear is just excellent, and they've generously supported the show since the start. So make sure to support them in return. You can send a nice email to feedback@blickmanengineering.com, and Drew will get that, and he'll be sure to appreciate it. Like I said, if you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll have live Q&A right after this. All right. Till then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong.
Brew strong.